Hey everybody, how are you doing? I am back and I'm going to do some things different. I know that in the last podcast I mentioned I was going to change things up a bit, um, which I did. And I meant to push out a pod in December, but because of work, I was TDY. And then when I got back, um, we went on block leave. So just kind of got wrapped up. Holidays, spending time with the family, all that. So sorry, forgive me. But it is now 2025. And I plan on doing more videos rather than pods. I mean, I'm still going to be releasing these as pods, but I'm also going to do more videos. So in today's pod, if you recall November's, it was on misinformation versus disinformation. And for this one, I'm going to focus on propaganda and mainly how propaganda uh, is disseminated to US citizens by the United States, and not necessarily just the United States government, but other entities as well. And you will see in this video. So just sit back, relax, listen to my voice, watch my awkward face. I don't know, don't care. You want to turn it off? Go ahead. You want to put your phone down and just listen to the soothing, relaxing voice that should probably be a smooth jazz radio broadcaster, even though I don't like jazz. Sorry to the jazz listeners. It's not my cup of tea. Anyways, sit back, relax, and listen to The Unfiltered Truth by your host and your boy, me, Customs and Courtesies. So, today we're going to explore the hidden truths and we're going to untangle the web of influence and dig into the systems shaping our world. Now, as I already mentioned, you know who I am. I am your host. And if you're new to the pod and to the vlog, I guess, I don't know if that's what I'm doing now, right? That's what I'm doing now, a vlog. Then I'm your host, Wellington Stirrup. And today we're going to dive into the fascinating and often uncomfortable topic, so don't get at me, how propaganda operates within the United States, not against foreign adversaries, but among its own citizens. Now, again, you're probably over here like, what? Not all propaganda is bad propaganda, though. So let's just get that off our chest, right? So what is propaganda? It is not just wartime posters or Soviet-style messaging. Um, it's any systemic effort to influence beliefs, attitudes, or actions, right? Often through media. So, what do I mean by that? This is what I mean by that. Let's see what I wrote down here. Let's see. Often through media, education, and culture. So, while we often associate propaganda with authoritarian regimes, the reality is that democratic societies, including the United States, use propaganda too, just in a subtler, more sophisticated ways. I got tired of standing, so I sat down. Whatever. So, let's get into defining propaganda in a democratic society, shall we? So, when we think of propaganda, we often imagine bold, overt messages, right? Uncle Sam wants you, or Cold War era cartoons. And I just gotta say, I love that Cold War era style of like cartoons and like that Soviet era style of like, you know, the propaganda images that the Soviets would use as well. And like the American one as well. Like I don't know what it is. I love that that era of propaganda messages. Like I know this is a tangent, side note, prone to do it. I'm sorry. It's my ADHD. But I know that I'm a big fan of like the World War I, you know, uh, posters that they used to have, and even like the World War II ones are like super cool too. But for some reason, that Cold War era, man, that just it hits hard. It hits hard. But anyways, let's get back on topic, right? Propaganda in the United States tends to be more subtle, and it's woven into advertising, um, political rhetoric, education. Hello, the Pledge of Allegiance, like that's straight up indoctrination. You cannot spin it any other way because no one else does that. Um, right? Like it's just you talk to people from other countries and they'll straight up tell you that that is kind of weird that we do that. And the only other countries that do that, China, I believe, North Korea. I don't know any other countries that might, but like let's be real. Pledge of Allegiance is that's just indoctrination. Cannot spin it any other way. I'm sorry if that offends you, but it is. And, that's just a part of the propaganda, right? But is it a bad thing? I don't necessarily think so. Is it a weird thing? Yeah, kind of. Whatever. But entertainment, look at all of our sporting events. What do we sing here in America before every single sporting event? Yeah, the national anthem. Does anybody else do that? No, unless it's an international event, right? So unless it's football, because I call it football, most Americans call it soccer, which just really irks me. But whatever. Before an English Premier League match, are they singing the national anthem of the United Kingdom? No, they're not. Um, Same in the Bundesliga, La Liga, Syria. No, nowhere else in the world are they doing a national anthem except here in America. Like the overt patriotism, yeah, propaganda, right? So it's in our entertainment. And again, is it a bad thing? No, but like seriously, before a high school football game, uh, it I find it more just annoying. I'm sorry, I do. I just Pledge of Allegiance, national anthem before every single sporting event is just kind of annoying. Um, and then having our military planes and jets, helicopters, you name it, flying over stadiums. Listen, as a person who's in the military, that's a waste of taxpayer dollars, but whatever. Whatever, I do find it cool, you know, but odd, right? Odd. And again, propaganda, right? What does it display when you see, um, four jets flying in formation, flying over on any given Saturday or Sunday of a sporting event, right after the national anthem or during the national anthem, or you have, the Army parachute team or the Navy SEAL parachute team parachuting into a sporting event. What message are we putting out there, right? Everybody's standing, everybody's like this, everybody's singing the national anthem, military's coming down. What does that say? What are we doing? Is that not propaganda? It is. And if you want to argue that it's not, you have to look in the mirror and you have to recognize that you're lying to yourself because that is straight up propaganda. Is it bad? No. Is it good? I mean, is it hurting anybody? Really? No, it's not. Um, so, yeah, uh, it's not bad propaganda. Annoying to me, mainly because it's just like, come on, I'm here to watch a game. Let's just watch this game. But, I get that that's not everybody. I get that some people are going to be angry that I even said that. Like, how dare I? Whatever. I don't care. Um, and the news, right? Let's get on to that final one, the news. And oh boy, we are going to talk about it. So, Edward Bernays, right? He's an author. the so-called father of public relations, right? So if you want to be like, well, where's your sources? I'm giving you a source right here. Once described propaganda as a necessary tool in democratic societies. See? Did I not just say, is it bad? Is it good? Right? It's a necessary tool in democratic societies. And he argued that the masses need guidance. If you're a parent, you probably agree. And that propaganda can help shape public opinion for the collective good. But who decides what is good? And, if you listened to the last pod about the misinformation and disinformation, it kind of hit on the same thing. What is the actual information? And sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, by the way. But what is the actual information? And is the person who is putting out that information using that information to twist it to suit their needs? Or is it being relayed in a way that other people are receiving it in a certain manner that then they go and say it to somebody else? And then it just, the telephone game, right? I whisper something in your ear, you whisper in somebody else's ear. And by the time it gets to that last person, it's a completely different message, right? So, same situation here, right? As I'm looking at my notes, by the way. But like he says, it's to help shape that public opinion for the collective good. But who decides what is good, right? Now, us in America, I would say, again, my opinion, I would say that we, the people, right? We, the American citizens, elect our representatives, right, to then go to Washington, D.C., and then argue things on our behalf of what we voted for. Or at least that's what they're supposed to do, right? Because we are a republic, democracy. I can't remember. Oh my goodness, this is bad. Yeah, but we're a republic. People will be like, oh, we're a democracy. We're a republic. We're a constitutional republic. Yeah, I think that's what it is, right? Because we have representatives. Not every person speaks for themselves in DC, right? That would be a democracy. We're a republic, we have representatives. Short civics lesson. Anywho, right? So I would say that we, the United States citizens, decide what is good as a whole. We may not agree on everything. We're a two-party system, which please do not get me started on that. But in a democratic system, or in democratic systems like the United States, propaganda isn't controlled by a single state entity. Instead, it's a collaboration between government, corporations, and media. And yes, I was like with the corporations because, well, and that's all I'll say on that one. But yeah, it's this decentralized nature that makes it harder to detect and arguably more effective. So let's get into the role of media and entertainment. All right, let's start with media. Um, the news is often considered the fourth estate, as we know if you paid attention in history or in civics class, and it's meant to hold power accountable. Keywords meant, but it also plays a role in reinforcing narratives that serve national interest or corporate agendas. And let's be real, um, the US news system, as of late, and when I say as of late, I'm saying like the past, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, uh, has been decreasing in value. Uh, I mean, just look at the past 8 years, right? You have a certain news agency that shares a name with an animal. I'm not going to say their name, but if you can't figure that out, okay. But yeah, and they were getting sued because of lying to their viewers on certain results, right? And they lost. Same with other news agencies that lean their way. And I would strongly put them in the terms of propaganda. Uh, they're not credible. And when you look at their news anchors that work for them, not credible, right? They aren't journalists, right? They're entertainment hosts. Um, and I believe they actually had to like drop the name news. I could be mistaken on that one, so don't quote me on that, but it doesn't matter. Uh, they're not credible, in my opinion. Professionally and as an opinion, they're not a credible source. So if you're getting your news from them, I would probably search elsewhere. I'm not saying that you can't digest right leaning news, right? Don't let my views shape yours, but they're serving a corporate agenda. Same with the other news agencies that, you have two N's in their name. Um, really, when it comes to credible news sources, I personally like to look at international news agencies, or I go to AP or NPR, and I use the bias news media graph, right? And I also use Ground News, not sponsored by them. But if they want to sponsor this video or me, by all means, sponsor away. But yeah, I use Ground News, and I use that mainly so I can see where things are being reported from, who is reporting on them. And not only that, I like to look at their headlines. That's just me as an intel person. Like, I like to look at their headlines and see, okay, this right leaning agency said, person X did this egregious thing, bah, outrage. This left leaning thing said, person X suggested this, and this was the result. Outrage, right? Because a title, as people who frequent YouTube will often say, clickbait, right? So you have that. And they're all serving corporate agendas because I believe there's only 6 families, right? Isn't that like the big thing? There's only 6 families that control almost all of our news here in America. So is that really a viable source? Or are we being fed a corporate agenda from billionaires? Think about it. Again, going back up to earlier, right? Where we said who decides what's good? Well, here in America, I would argue that we are being told what is good by our news agencies, right? Because they're serving a corporate agenda. And again, but we're not here to get into that. Let me just drive on, right? Anyways, think about coverage of wars, right? How often do we see news outlets questioning the validity of U.S. military interventions, right? From Vietnam to Iraq, mainstream media has often echoes official narratives, right? So the media does have public affairs officers, and we put out statements, um, and they are vetted by them, and they go to the news agency. So that way, you, the civilian populace, if you are a civilian watching this, understand what we are doing. And I've worked alongside PAOs, and I trust PAOs, and I'm not here to feed you BS, right? Um, I'm here to bring you facts, right? As I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as a historian and as an intel professional if I were feeding you, again, mis or disinformation, right? And propaganda. Um, So in our PAOs, I believe they do a good job of putting out what exactly is going on, right? And they give that to the news medias. So you know, they where was I? Um, they give out official narratives, right? Framing conflicts as battles for freedom or democracy, even when the underlying motives are economic or geopolitical. I really hate when people say that this administration or that administration is politicizing the military, and the military is not a social experiment, and stop with all the woke liberal nonsense. Guess what? The military has actually always been a social experiment. The military has always been at the forefront of change when it comes to what is happening in this country, right? In no better system are you going to get people from all across the country, group them together, right? Whether you like the person to your left or right, you still have to work with them. You can't quit your job. Jail, right? So the military was first to integrate when it came to race. Um, the military, when it comes to paid maternity leave and paternity leave, guess what? You get a crap ton of leave, right? A crap ton of paid time off to take care of your child. And now you're seeing a lot of corporations do it. A lot of corporations like to hire veterans, and they like to model themselves after the military. A lot of Fortune 500 companies have modeled themselves after the military. Why? Because we are a successful social experiment. Whether you want to believe it or not, we are. So take this pill, swallow it. It might be tough, so drink some water, right? Anywho, entertainment is another powerful tool. Hollywood often collaborates with the Pentagon to produce films that glorify the military, right? In movies like Top Gun, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Top Gun is by far one of my favorite military movies. American Sniper, I like The Lone Survivor more personally. Shape public perceptions of war, painting it as noble, necessary, etc. And this isn't accidental, right? The military provides funding, equipment, and consultation to ensure images are depicted positively. Like all the Shia LaBeouf Transformers. Oh man, I love Linkin Park, but like seriously, it was like Linkin Park, the Pentagon, and Hollywood were like, hey, let's make a big blockbuster about Transformers because they're robots in disguise, and like it's gonna sell. And Linkin Park was like, we got three bomb albums that are about to drop, all tied to Transformers. I love them though. I love them. The soundtrack's amazing and I love it. So whatever. Um, and R.I.P. Chester. I love Linkin Park. Anyways, now let's get into the education and historical narratives, right? So I'm not going to go on any more tangents, I promise. Propaganda doesn't stop with the media. Let me repeat that again. Propaganda doesn't stop with the media. It starts in our schools. Oh boy, here we go. The way history is taught in the US, and again, as a historian, I have issues with how we are going and what we are teaching or not teaching because we're afraid that our children can't handle it and that they won't be so patriotic. I did it again. I went on a tangent and I said I wasn't. Anyways, the US history is taught in a way that often glorifies the nation's achievements while downplaying its darker chapters. For instance, many textbooks emphasize the heroism, right, of the founding fathers and the concept of American exceptionalism. Oh boy, people aren't going to like this. Probably be banned in Florida. But topics like genocide, of indigenous peoples, slavery, or U.S. interventions in Latin America are often sanitized or glossed over, right? And what's really interesting is even though a lot of my professors for my history degree did a fantastic job at teaching us like the legit here is what happened, when it came to basic training, my drill sergeant, our senior drill, actually sat us down and would pull us together sometimes and tell us about what the U.S. Army did to native indigenous people. And it's dark, right? Like it was dark. And we were like, what? No way. We wouldn't do that. And he was like, oh, yeah. you know, chemical warfare before we knew what chemical warfare was. Blankets, right? Oh, this native indigenous person looked at us wrong. Soldier got a little itchy on the trigger. Pow, massacre, right? And you're going to go to these units, and guess what? You're going to celebrate these things like it is a good thing, and it's not a good thing. And this is what he taught us. And this was 2010. Woke liberal nonsense. Ugh. Anywho, you got to teach the darker chapters, right? You got to know where you came from. Good, bad, and the ugly. And if you don't like that, well, then I'm sorry. But history, history can get down with some dark stuff. Like, if you're into dark humor, you should be into history. But yeah. For instance, many textbooks emphasize, I already did that, right? Yeah, I did that. Latin America, CIA and all that. Yeah. The selective storytelling shapes how Americans view their country and its role in the world. Now, so, again, sorry, tangent, but America could learn a thing or two from Germany. Because Germany does a really good job at discussing certain events that happened from the 30s to the 40s. World War II. Sorry. But yeah, they do a good job of teaching that. And right now, America is saying, we don't want to teach our history. Like, our children will not love this country, and they will refuse to say the pledge or stand for the anthem. And, a part of me says, hey, is this not a free country? I say teach the history. Let people know. This is how we were founded. This is what we did. This is, do we agree? Here's the thing. Here's how you nip this all in the bud right now, right? Sorry for the tangent. You teach the history, and then you say things like this. You say, is this who we are today? No, it's not. America is one of the most diverse countries in the world, right? Racially, ethnically, religiously. Yeah, I think that covers it. Gender, right? Like, we're one of the most diverse countries in this world. And that does not reflect who we were, right? Because we can change. We can always change for the better. Like Rocky said after beating, Drago, if I can change and you can change, maybe we can all change, right? We can always change for the better. So we should teach the history, because what we're seeing now is starting to repeat some things in history. Warning, right? Historian, warning. It is happening because we don't want to accept our past. And so we're going to start repeating it. My 2 cents. But anyways, the selective storytelling, that shapes how we view our country. And it instills a sense of patriotism, right? And moral superiority, making it easier for citizens to support policies that align with these narratives. So, which leads me on to the last section. Yay! Fear is one of propaganda's most effective tools. I should just stop right there, but I'm not. In the post 9/11 era, phrases like the war on terror or homeland security, baby, became part of the national lexicon. These terms frame complex issues in simplistic, emotional, charged ways. making it easier to justify invasive policies like mass surveillance or endless wars. Thank goodness we are out of Afghanistan. I don't really care what your view and opinion on our exit strategy is, right? Um, as an Afghan vet, I have my opinions. I've you know shared them with friends and family and everything. What happened that day happened, and I'm not going to blame either administration. Um, it could have been better. We'll just leave it at that. But what I will say is, I'm happy that we're not there anymore, right? Because, yeah, screw that place. Anywho, um, when we hear those things, never ending war, right? Forever war, war on terror. Where was it? Um, Mass surveillance and stuff like that. That strikes fear in people. And even the color coded terror alert system that was introduced by the Department of Homeland Security was a form of propaganda. And it kept fear at the forefront of public consciousness, encouraging compliance with government actions. Right? And this isn't new. During the Cold War, the Red Scare created an atmosphere of paranoia, leading to blacklists, loyalty oaths, and widespread suspicion. And fear keeps people focused on external threats, diverting attention away from domestic issues like inequality and corruption. And this has really been hitting home because for the past, I think, almost 8 years now, especially events that took place this month, 4 years ago, actually, upcoming anniversary of it. Yeah, I don't care. Again, I do not care if this hurts your feelings, if this makes you mad and this offends you, because if you're a part of the crowd that says F your feelings and this is hurting your feelings, well, look in the mirror. But, the events that took place that day in January, 3 days from now, domestic terrorism, plain and simple. I'm sorry. Like, that is domestic terrorism. And people say that it's never happened before, and it actually has happened before. When Lincoln was elected, there was a mob that said they were going to storm the Capitol, and they started marching towards the Capitol. They got I can't remember his rank, but he was one of the commanding officers of an artillery battery, right? They spun his unit up, and he put out messages telling people that if they marched onto the Capitol, he would take buckshot and grape shot and shoot it into the masses indiscriminately. And then he would take whoever's bodies that he found, or if you were a prisoner, and then he would tie you to that cannon and then shoot cannonballs from said cannon. Gangster. Like, that's just gangster. And that's because people were trying to march on the Capitol because they didn't like the results of an election. And here you had this military commander being like, ha 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 ha, try me. And you know what? Oh man, gangster. That's just gangster. I'm sorry. But it's happened before, right? And they called it out for what it was. And then look at what just happened in South Korea, right? Like, 2 impeachments because somebody tried to, overthrow a government per se. I don't know. But here we are. Everything's good. Everything's kosher, right? So, fear plays big into the external. So it diverts people from the internal. And I will just throw it out there. You got certain supremacists that should be branded in this country as homegrown terrorists. And they're not. And that tells you a lot on certain things. If you can read into that. So, but it's fear, right? Strictly fear and corruption. So why does this all matter, right? Because propaganda shapes how the world and what we believe and how we act. So it shapes how we see the world, what we believe, and how we act. And when it's used to maintain the status quo or obscure inconvenient truths, it limits our ability to question power and demand accountability. Recognizing that propaganda doesn't mean rejecting all media or distrusting every institution, right? So I still consume news, right? I still watch. Well, I actually haven't watched cable news, mainstream media news in quite some time. Couple of like almost 2 months now. It's been good. It's been good. It's just a good detox, right? But I don't distrust the government. I'm not one of those who believes in conspiracy theories and stuff like that. To me, that's giving the government way too much credit. Way too much credit. So, yeah. But it means being a critical thinker, right? So you have to ask yourself, who benefits from this message? What brings, what's being left out, right? So who benefits, what's being left out, and whose interests are being served? Once you start asking yourself that, when you watch news, read news, you're at sporting events, you are scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, doesn't matter, right? Once you start seeing things, you'll start to recognize things. And a good person to follow on this one is USA Mom in Germany, I think, or just USA Mom. No, I think it's USA Mom in Germany. But she does a really good job at like pointing out some of the stuff about American propaganda and the last three things that I just mentioned, right? You have to ask yourself, who benefits from this message, what's being left out, and whose interests are being served. And so that is all for today in this episode of The Unfiltered Truth, or Truth Unfiltered. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but you'll see in the title, right? So the United States isn't unique in using propaganda. Every nation does it, right? Every military does it. Every news agency does it. Corporations do it, right? Just do it. That's propaganda. Just do it. Right? But understanding how it works is crucial if we want to navigate the world as informed, empowered citizens. So thank you for listening. If you found this episode thought-provoking, share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the systems shaping our world. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.